Okay,
so good.
we may have to investigate that video. I know you've already seen it, but I mean,
I don't even. I would revisit those all day.
dude,
like
so good. Grand Theft Auto content is just it's so good.
So deplorable.
There's so much of it to be had. It's just ever changing environments, and it's just so crazy out there now and hectic that like it's all over the place.
And the people are insane.
Red Dead and Grand Theft Auto, man, them Rockstar games, dude, they have a way of just making creatable content.
So great.
All right, let's go. "307 Reacts." I'm Matt. That's Chris. You guys, best audience in the world. Even the 170,000 of you every 28 days that doesn't subscribe to us for whatever reason. But hey, you know what? You're here right now and you're watching the video. So if you want to just like scroll up a little bit and hit the little thing, I know we got a handful of you from doing that on the last couple of weeks of videos because you commented on it. Someone even commented and they were like, "All right, I subscribed, but only because you asked me at the beginning." And it was like, well, okay, so here we are right at the beginning. Okay,
and on the screen it doesn't work.
See, on the screen in front of us, we have Jordan Peterson and the nobility and value of working class jobs. Now,
also, one more little plug. February 4th.
Oh, yes.
I have a music video dropping right here on 307 Reacts. Next week, we will get into details as to when it will be dropping, but it is me, my girlfriend, Kenna, and a special guest. You guys don't want to miss it. So, we will be making more announcements next week, so be sure you're tuned in, locked into every video. You're subscribed. You have your notification bell.
I was just going to say the subscription button does all that for you, so you don't even have to. It'll just pop up on your phone when it comes up. So, and it'll be on our homepage, the whole works. So, if you don't know who Jordan Peterson is, he's a very philosophical, motivational speaker. I don't even know, a philosopher.
You might as well call him a rapper because he's out here spitting facts. Okay.
I tried to watch a video of his today while I was at work where he was like, he was debating somebody and they brought up a point and he got like halfway through his rebuttal on the point and I forgot what the question was that the person had asked him because he got so existential with it that like he was on a level of it. He had like dissected the question into 3 different levels and was talking about things on a different, so if you take parts of part A and put them in with part B, you get this combination out of it. But then you have, part A and part B are like literal conversations he's having and sentences that he's saying, but this is how he's structuring his response. And it's like, he's crazy. He's very, very smart and has very logical responses to things, and I highly recommend checking out some of his content. And that's it, man. Should we just get? Speaking of which, let's check out some of his content. Right?
He is also at risk of losing his license in Canada. He has to go. Supposedly, they're gonna take him to court over this whole speech thing, I guess, because what he says is too offensive or something.
We can't understand you, so we're offended.
Yeah, pretty much. But he's going to be required to take. This is what they tell him. He's going to be required to take these classes on online etiquette, and they will not allow him to have any sort of social media presence unless he passes these classes, which is subject to the opinion of somebody else. So show as much support for Jordan Peterson as you can. I know his daughter has been out there kind of speaking on his behalf and saying this is what's going on. So follow Jordan Peterson on Instagram, and from there you should be able to get to his daughter's page. I forget her name, but she has a big in-depth, this is what the fuck's going on.
Blame Canada. Blame Canada. No, I think Canada's
Trudeau over there.
I think Canada's fine. The internet's a crazy place.
It's a crazy place, man.
There's new laws being created every day. We've been subject to a few of those ourselves and been having to cover some of our own tracks with some of this shit, like delete some of our videos and get rid of things just so we don't get pinned, So
that's it.
Anyways, with that, like, comment, subscribe. Go to Jordan Peterson's page. Like, comment, subscribe to him. Let's get into it. Here we go.
That's one of the things that's really characteristic of working class jobs, I think, much more so than more intellectually complicated, abstract jobs.
Look at that suit.
That is amazing.
One of the things you have to be a good person to be around to do well at a working class job. Because the jobs themselves are quite difficult. They're physically strenuous. They're demanding. And the payoff for that, in part, can be the camaraderie that emerges as a consequence of the shared enterprise. And that can make those jobs extremely worth.
I just have to point out really quick. I have to get it off my mind now, or I'm going to be thinking it the whole time, and I'm going to miss a lot of the points that he's saying. I I am not a person who can afford nice things, like really nice things. I'm sure that suit is a very, very nice suit. I'm sure it's probably very expensive. But when I see it, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, this is the guy that walks out when you're at the customer service counter at Southwest Airlines. This is the guy that walks out, and he's like the Southwest Airlines guy, right? And this is the point where you know you're either getting escorted out or you're getting a free flight to anywhere in the world, right? Like this is that guy that's about to come out and tell you yes or no. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not trying to like downplay or like make fun of it or anything. It's just where
I do think
where my poor class mind goes to is just like it looks like a high-class Southwest Airlines guy. I don't know.
I do think his suit has some sort of symbolism, which he may have a video where he talks about it.
I think it does, too. It's got a number on the thing.
He had a buddy make him a frog hat because everybody, for whatever reason, there was a meme going around where they were correlating him with Pepe the Frog for some reason.
Okay.
And so he was like, well, I don't understand, whatever. So he went on stage with a Pepe the Frog hat, and people just loved it, right? And so he's like, all right, cool. So he just went along with it.
Feed into it, I guess, whatever, yeah.
So this suit may be one of those things.
I noticed, it's like I said, it's got a number on I think below the pocket or something like that. So it's probably associated with something. Again, this is just where my mind went with it. I had to tell everybody just so we could get it out there. Now we can proceed with the video, and I can try and dissect some of what he's saying. Here we go.
Emerges as a consequence of the shared enterprise. And that can make those jobs extremely worthwhile. You can make very, very good friends in a working class environment.
Fact.
And it's also very frequently the case that those working class environments are characterized by an extremely high level of sophisticated humor, is that they run on like derisive play. And it's one of the things I really liked about the restaurant is people are always playing tricks on each other and making jokes and, you know, and having a kind of dark fun.
Yes.
And everyone was participating in that. And it was certainly the case. I had a lot of working class jobs from the time I was 14 till the time I was about 25, I would say. And it was definitely the case that that ethos of harsh play. When I worked at this railway crew in northern Saskatchewan in the summer one year, and I was what the hell they call it, a peanut pounder. I think that was my job. I had this thing that looked like a lead tin can on the end of a stick. And I followed this machine that went down the tracks and laid down the plates that rails fit in, and there'd be a hole that was drilled into the plate, and then these things called peanuts held the plate in place so that someone come along and then spike the plate into place. And the guy in front of me would drop this little wooden dowel, which kind of looked like a peanut, hence the name, into the hole to hold the plate solid, and I would whack it with this lead can on the end of a stick, and that's what I did all day, was just this for like 16 hours out in the hot sun. And I did that for months, and it was an interesting place to begin working at. I write about this a bit in Beyond Order. I believe it's in Beyond Order. Because there was an initiation ceremony that went along with the job. So when I first showed up on the crew, no one was particularly friendly. It was all men, and they were rough guys. Like a lot of them were native guys from Cree Indian guys from Saskatchewan. A lot of them had been in prison. They were rough guys, and they weren't that friendly if you were new. And they give you a rough time. So everybody who...
That's called being a greenhorn.
That's it.
In most blue-collar jobs, most working-class jobs, you are going to be that guy when you first get on the crew. I still remember one of my first days actually getting hired, because I worked at Charter, the company I'm at now. I worked there for like 8 months at a temp company. So I worked at the building, but for a different company for like 8 months. So I wore different clothes. I didn't get to the uniforms. I wasn't part of their company. And then they had like a hiring session where they decided if they wanted to hire on temps, and I got hired on. And when I got hired on, one of the first things they did, it was like, I got my uniform, and he was like, all right, cool, new guy brings donuts. One of the first things, and that was like, it was like a rule around that area. Like anyone that got hired on new, you bring a box of donuts. And if you don't bring donuts, you get hazed from the entire crew. And it was like a real thing.
That's not That's not bad.
No, that's a very light
bad
version of it. But like I said, it was like little things like that where it was just kind of like that blue collar. That's kind of the start of how you make some friendships. That's how you get to know your boss. That's how you get to know the environment. Like you're expected to do these things, and then once you come onto the crew, there's going to be some shitty jobs that are out there that like when that shitty job comes up, the entire crew's going to look at you and go, saddle up, partner. Yeah. Like, it's time to learn, like that whole thing. You're always that guy.
So I may have told the story on the channel before, and I wish I could remember which episode, but we had a new guy. There's two separate ones, but one of them, this is the thing. At the shop I worked at downtown Spokane, they had a little staircase in the alley where it would go down to the basement. We just had, like, stored stuff down there, old equipment, whatever. Well, the bums every once in a while would go down there and take a shit on the stairs because, like, it's not really nobody in public can see you, and then they don't get a ticket or whatever. Well, if you're the new guy, it's your job to pick up the shit. Anyway, so this new guy kept putting it off, whatever. And if you want to hear the story in greater detail, you can look back over the past 600 episodes and figure out which one it is, because I can't remember. But we'll keep it short and sweet. Basically, the new guy told me and the other guy who was training him, well, I'm not going to be here Saturday. You guys are working Saturday. If I don't do it today, Senior just have you guys do it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Right. Oh, so, you have mentioned this before. That's right. I remember
we broke into his box on a Saturday, took the bum shit, put it in the top drawer, locked the shit back up. There you go. Sat there all weekend in the August heat, 100-some degrees in there. And, he didn't last much longer after that.
Whip that open that next morning and Monday morning.
The other guy typically, so what we would do is we would have somebody come in who's interested, right? And typically it was younger kids and, 17, 18. Mm-hmm. And this kid come in, hey, man, I really want to get a job. Can you show me the lube tech thing, whatever. So what Senior would do is, you're going to come in 3 days a week and clean the shop, right? That's where you start.
Dude, that's
so
where you should start, to be honest.
He would come in, and on Saturdays, typically Saturdays we ran a skeleton crew, and Senior, the owner, was out of town. So, it's time to see what the new guy's made of. So we would have him doing all sorts of ridiculous shit. Fucking, hey, can you go over and ask Collins for my bolt stretcher? And Collins is like, no, I don't have it. I think James borrowed it. Then he's over to James talking about a bolt stretcher. And so we have him running around, and then he's trying to keep up with the stuff he's supposed to be doing. So anyway, we wore this kid down so far one day. It's like 2 hours before closing. He's like, you can tell he's just exhausted.
About to die, dude. Yeah.
So we're like, hey, man, you need to transfer, because we had some buckets, that what we call contamination buckets. So they're buckets that have oil and coolant. Yeah. Well, if you separate them, right, because the oil will float on top, you'll take a little thing, and it would suck the oil off the top, and you would just hold the hose on the top until all the oil's gone, and then you'd separate the two. Okay. Well, hey, we're going to have you do this. Really boring job. That fucking pump, dude, it...
monotonous as hell.
Like a gallon in 5 minutes, maybe.
Oh, God.
Like, it was so
Takes
damn
forever,
slow.
Yeah.
So he's back there. He falls asleep, right? He's sitting there sleeping. I hear a little snore around the corner. I peek my head around. I gotta go, hold on. So I get the cheetah or the bead blaster,
bead
right?
Blaster.
So it's a big canister that you fill up with air, and when a tire won't seat onto the bead of the rim, you put this in there, and 250 psi all at once. It just boom, fills it up. So
they're fun. They're fun to use.
Oh yeah. They're a little scary your first time.
They're a little scary.
They're great.
First time for me a few weeks back, and it was a little scary, but they're fun.
So I grab it. I fill it up with 150 psi. Okay, I'm not trying to blow the guy off the planet. And I go, hey, Kurt, get Daniel. Get him to come around this corner. He go, okay. Daniel. He all kind of wake up and shit. He go, come here, I need you. He come around the corner. As soon as he come around the corner, just blasted him. Hit him right in the stomach. Well, he wasn't wearing a belt. Blew his pants and underwear. I mean, he had wiener and beans out for everybody to see. Like, oh my God, dude. It was the funniest shit I'd ever seen in my life.
Oh my God, dude.
But like,
how much better of a shot could you make, bro?
Dude,
like, that was perfect.
It was just perfect. So if you're younger looking into a blue-collar job, just know you're going to have tough skin.
You're in for a round of hazing. Yeah. You're going to get hazed at your first, like, roughneck job. You're going to get hazed a little bit. That's it. Just be ready for it. You'll be fine.
But the thing is once you're no longer the new guy, you know,
you get to do it to the next guy.
sailing.
You get to be part of the crew the next time, and it's
That's
great
it.
being
It
on the
is.
outside looking in, or on the other side. It's great. So, all right, let's get more into this here.
Yeah.
Came on board, and the crew got a stupid nickname. Mine was Howdy Doody, which was this red-headed puppet freckled puppet with big ears from the 1950s. And I asked one guy why he called me Howdy Doody, and he said, because you look nothing like him, which
I mean,
was an extremely witty answer, a very funny answer. Anyways, it was a bit of a derogatory nickname, and part of it was delivered to see if you had enough of a sense of humor to accept it without getting all narcissistically puffed up and irritable about it.
dude, and to be honest,
And
I'm
so-
pretty sure, really quick, I've been called Howdy Doody at a job before. Like,
I've
hey,
been
Howdy
called
Doody.
a lot worse than that.
Yeah, like
You
when someone
know?
doesn't know you and you're
Yeah.
kind of new to the thing, it's again, I guess it's just a level of you got to expect that. Like, hey, Howdy Doody, come over here and get these things in here.
A couple of my personal favorites from around the shop is Dickhead, Dick Mouth. That's always a good one. I mean, the names could go on and on, and a lot that I couldn't say on YouTube.
Yeah,
But you know,
that's shop life for you, man. That's blue collar life for you, dude.
got shortened eventually to Howdy, which was a lot better because there was kind of a cowboy chic thing going on with that.
Yeah.
And that was a lot better. And but there was this period where you got ribbed a lot. 2 weeks about
Boom.
it. And
He's
if
talking
you
about it.
3
didn't
weeks.
collapse under the weight of the teasing, then and you did your damn job,
Yes.
and you're reasonably entertaining to be around,
Yes.
then the doors opened and you were now part of the crew.
Boom.
There was one guy there, I wrote about him, Lunch Bucket was his name, that was his nickname. Lunch Bucket. He showed up on
Lunch
the crew
Bucket.
with a lunch bucket, and that was a bad idea.
Yes.
Because it's obvious that his mum had packed
Oh
it.
no.
And you don't want to show up to a work crew of ex-cons with a lunch bucket that your mum packed. It's a bad look. And so
It is a bad look.
He was called Lunch Bucket from day one. And he was a pretty touchy guy and pretty narcissistic. And people didn't like him very much. And he was tested a lot. And the testing started out with people just throwing pebbles at him. So the crew would stretch out about a quarter of a mile across the line as we were working on the tracks. And Lunch Bucket would be doing whatever job he had. And the game was to see if you could bounce a pebble off Lunch Bucket's helmet. And so he'd be working, and these pebbles would be flying out of God only knows where because people didn't make it obvious. And it was a score for your mates if you bounced a pebble off Lunch Bucket's helmet. And he
so
did not
good.
take to that.
Yeah, probably not.
The pebbles got larger as the days progressed.
Oh God.
And eventually he was driven off.
Yeah.
And it was because he didn't subjugate himself properly to the multi-dimensional discipline of the crew. Because he wasn't a good guy to have around. He couldn't take a ribbing. He
That's what it
didn't
is.
have a sense of
No
humor.
sense of humor.
He wasn't able to contribute to the game that was being played socially. Well, these men were doing what was pretty tedious and difficult work. Like we were literally out in the hot sun for 16 hours at a stretch, and it was rather mind-numbing work and somewhat physically demanding. The peanut pounding wasn't particularly difficult, but the
spike driving.
the spike pounding was.
yeah.
And you need some camaraderie in those positions so that
You don't go
your
insane.
life is
So your
rendered
morale stays up.
maybe not just tolerable, but even enjoyable in principle. And so you're playing a multi-dimensional game, and if you're willing to subjugate yourself to that discipline, then you learn how to play that game, and if you get good at that, then that's a portable skill.
Oh, it's
Hang on, everyone. It's
Bear
okay.
with us,
Everyone's
okay.
gonna be fine.
Hey, that's Jordan to 989898.
okay.
All right, back to the show.
So you might ask yourself, well, what are you doing when you work as hard as you possibly can on at least one thing? Is that you're molding yourself into someone who can aim at something and move forward with efficiency and skill. And maybe if you're doing that extraordinarily well, you're not only molding yourself into someone who can aim at something and move towards it with efficiency and skill, but you can do that at the same time that you're helping other people around you do that.
Yep.
Right? So you can think about this. Imagine you're a good
Camaraderie,
athlete
man.
on a team, and you might say, well, what does it mean to be a good athlete? And you might say, well, I'm a soccer player, a football player, and I'm great I'm a top scorer. And you might say, well, that's enough to make you a great athlete. And the truth is that's actually not enough to make you a great athlete, because you need to have the skill, whatever the skill might be. And high-level skill is, of course, extremely desirable in relationship to the goal. But you also have to be a good, let's say, a good sport. And that's a rather trivial description for something that's actually quite a profound moral accomplishment. So if you're not only a highly skilled athlete in the technical sense, but you're a good sport, it means that while you practice your skill, whatever that is, you also elevate the ability of all your teammates to make their skill manifest, and also to improve their skill. And you do that simultaneously, right? And that's a high level athletic ethos, is you're a good athlete and you're a good team player, and the union of those two things might make you something approximating a good person. And that's transportable. I think part of the reason that we admire sports heroes, when they're sports heroes in the truest sense, is because if they are ritual models of emulation in relationship to the development of high-level skill, and they're also admirable team players in the highest sense, then they actually are something approximating admirable citizens in the truest sense. And that pattern of skilled, productive, generous cooperation is actually a model that you can extract out of multiple games, and it's a good model to emulate. And that's something.
Leave it to Jordan Peterson to go from like, hey, working in working class jobs and blue collar jobs is a good way to make friends, to this whole in-depth changed over perception of being a good person because of practice of a ritual,
and I think that's kind of what he's getting to, is about the nobility of the working class, right? Because maybe a lot of people don't understand what it is to work in a blue collar job or a working class job, but most everybody on the planet knows at least a little bit about sports. Yeah. So it's the whole thing. And I was going to say, it's one of these things in the shop that happens quite often when I see, well, for instance, this week, Mason's been doing timing chains and turbos on an EcoBoost.
Yuck.
And I was like, hey, listen, I haven't worked on that exact motor doing that exact job, but I have done a similar one on a similar motor. Let me tell you, okay, if this has the dowel pins like this one does, you're going to want to go ahead and try to do it this way. That's always worked for me. And then he's like, dude, that's the best shit I've ever, okay, yeah, I'm going to do it that way from now on. So that's one of those things where I learned something, and then I was able to bring it to the team, and now we're both on the same level, and he'll learn something.
Next time one of those comes in, he knows exactly how to handle that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and in fact, I was doing a timing cover yesterday on a Subaru and run into a kind of a weird, he's like, now listen, I know that this timing cover has a part to pry right here. Like, it looks, boom, don't pry there.
Yeah, you will snap it.
He's like, do not do that. So it's one of those things, it's as we increase in skill, we help each other, and it helps the whole team, and, the whole shop is doing what we're supposed to be doing. So
yeah.
I think that's kind of the thing he's going for, trying to draw that correlation.
Making it on a relatable level, too, like making it so everyone can relate to kind of what he's talking about. A sense of camaraderie, man.
Yeah.
It goes a long way, especially in a workplace.
It does.
That isn't arbitrary, by the way. And so that also answers a question that I posed earlier in relationship to nihilism and belief. It's like, well, what should be foundational? And the answer might be something like practice in developing the capacity for skilled movement forward in a manner that simultaneously encourages the others that you're cooperating with to do precisely the same thing. And that's not some arbitrary ethos. It's not arbitrary, because if that doesn't happen, then nothing flourishes. And if it does happen, then everything flourishes. And it's also not relativistic in some sense, because you have to do that no matter what you're doing. No matter what it is that you're doing, if you do that well, you're doing whatever it is you're doing well. In fact, that's really in some sense how you would define well. And that's true. You'll be at home, and maybe you get a plumber to come over, or an electrician, somebody who's skilled in the working class technical sense, and And they do a good job, and that's a great relief, especially, let's say, if it's a plumbing problem, because you really need your plumbing fixed. It's not optional.
Yeah.
Well, you know what the options are.
You know what the options
They're
are.
not great. And so it's really important to be a good plumber. And then you think, well, what makes a good plumber? And one is obviously technical skill. The man or the woman, generally the man when it's plumbing, knows what he's doing, and he does it efficiently. But that isn't all. If he's a really good plumber, well, he tells you what he's going to do.
Yeah.
So he can communicate what he's going to do. He can tell you, he can identify the problem. So he's a good diagnostician. He can tell you what he's going to do. He can tell you how much what he's going to do will cost you. Then he does it, that's what it costs. Right? So there's an honesty in interpersonal transaction that goes along with the diagnostic accuracy and the skill, and that's reflective of a very deep ethical orientation. And so to be a really good plumber,
which is a very difficult thing to do. For instance, today I had one, right? Car comes in, they explain the issue, okay? I diagnose it, okay? You have a bad ignition coil, okay? We just did all the spark plug. Well, let's back up. The time before it was here, they did 2 spark plugs, and then they're like, oh, those other coils are hard to get to. So they just did 2 spark plugs.
Oh, no.
So they put the coils back on, still misfiring, so they bring it to us. We go, hey, we need to replace the other 6 spark plugs, and we would also recommend all 8 ignition coils, because coil number 2 has carbon tracking on the plug, which is indicative of a bad ignition coil.
Yeah, bad coil, yeah.
But they said, well, just replace the 1 coil and all the spark plugs. Okay, that's cool. So now they're back. Okay.
Of course, because it's still misfiring, right?
Well, when it gets warm, which is indicative of another ignition coil. This time, cylinder 5, not cylinder 2. Cylinder 2 still purring away. So I go, hey, I would recommend that we change the other 7 ignition coils. And they go, well, we would like to replace 1. And I go, okay, cool. So I dive into cylinder 5, pull the ignition coil out. Now, here's the thing that bit me, okay? The connector for that ignition coil. Typically, I can undo the screw, kind of pull it up, pull it out, take a look at it. Oh, yeah, it's bad, right? I hardly ever disconnect it unless I'm replacing it. And because those tabs, those retainer tabs, are so easy to break. So I go to unplug it. I'm like, man, this tab is really, that tab is really holding on. So I have a little pick that I'll kind of sneak in there, sneak up and lift the tab up. Tab's lifted up. Still won't come off. I'm like, what the hell is going on with this thing? So I eventually, and you hear a crack. I'm like, oh my God, it had melted. The ignition coil is shorted and melted the connector to the thing.
Nice.
So when I called them and sold the job, hey, the ignition coil is going to cost you this much, and this is what it's going to be out the door. I then have to call them back saying, hey, by the way, I have to add a $20. I mean, it's not a big deal, but getting that accuracy on your first initial quote after diagnosis sometimes isn't the best. And I'd imagine plumbing is the same way.
Yeah.
Because you never know, once you cut this little section out of the wall and take a look, you're like, oh, shit, well, that was a little worse than what I thought.
Or, you put the snake down the thing, and all of a sudden the snake stops going. And it's like a high-powered electric snake, and it stops going. And it's like, we have a bigger problem on our hands.
We have a problem.
Then we have to, then you start diagnosing. Now we got to start digging. And digging for plumbing, I know, is not
expensive.
cheap. Not cheap at all.
Yeah.
Before I moved in here, they had to get the main sewer line replaced in the backyard, and they had to come in and dig the whole fucking thing out and get it all replaced all the way out to the thing.
And that's the hardest part, and that's where a lot of people get pissed off with people like who do the working class thing. Is it's very hard to. I mean, sure, my diagnosis was still correct. The ignition coil was bad, but you didn't know how bad it was. You knew it was bad. Yeah.
You didn't know you were going to have to fucking crush a melted pigtail out of there and have to replace that shit. Like,
so I mean that's one of the things that especially really good diagnostic, and I should have unplugged it and checked it. I mean, you're supposed to ohm it out and all this bullshit, but when you get good at something, you do something for so long, you find shortcuts, and sometimes shortcuts bite you in the ass.
It's just you just know it's like it's an ignition coil, man. You need an ignition coil, and that's where you start. It's like that's the thing. You've done tons of ignition coils. What you haven't done is a bunch of melted fucking pigtails. So that's where you're like, oh well, this is new. Now this is a new thing, and now you're gonna tell Mason about that, and Mason's gonna go, shit. Now I know what to look out for on ignition coils. Now I know every time check the thing because it might be melted in there.
That's it.
Again, we're full circle here, everybody. All right. Let's go.
Then you have to be highly skilled, but you have to be a clear and honest communicator, and you have to play fair in the most fundamental sense. And then you might say imagine he has some employees with him, and you might also, maybe you're deciding if you want to have the plumber come back if you have problems in the future, and so one of the things you're going to do is check out how he interacts with his subordinates, and if he's someone who's teaching them, because you can watch that, and doing that in a fair manner and not talking down to them and not manipulating them and not tyrannizing over them, and is also able to do that in a manner that's sort of civilized so that you don't feel like it's an imposition to have them in your house because there's no psychological tension, surrounding the enterprise, then you think, well, he's a good boss and he's done a really credible job and he's very honest and reliable and he solved the problem and he did it on time and he didn't charge you any more than he had told you he would charge you and it was a fair price. Like that's pretty multi-dimensional space to manage.
That's pretty good.
Simultaneously, right? That's a very sophisticated mode of ethical conduct. It can't be just reduced to being a good plumber in the technical sense.
He just puts it in the box.
It's being a good person who happens to be a plumber.
Yeah.
And that is success in a microcosm that is truly reflective of society at a much broader level. And it's definitely the case. I think this is absolutely clear that the integrity of our society depends in no small part on the minority of people, and often working class people, who do that sort of thing exceptionally well, right? They're the people who they build everything and they keep everything going.
Yeah.
They have to.
I'll tell you what, man. The guy I work for, Jason, is one of the best bosses. And I mean, here's the thing. He went to college for accounting. He's really, really good at that. He took like 4 classes in automotive with his buddy and then just decided being an accountant's boring. I'm going to go work at Honda. And then did that for a while.
I know a lot of dudes that I know a lot of blue collar industries, especially out here, that are started from the ground up just by regular people. So like if you're going to start your own business, especially that's the biggest part of your business is your customer service and gaining customers. The best way to gain customers is to have this existential philosophical knowledge of being a good person who happens to have a skill set in something in a service that people need done, to where you can make that reputable, to where people will recommend you and have you back, and then boom, before you know it, you're making money. But it all stems from initially being a helper and being a good person, like starting from that. So yeah, man. You have to if you're gonna be in the blue collar thing. It kind of comes with the territory. You gotta know how to communicate in a professional manner and
it's really interesting how he said you kind of watch the plumber and see how he interacts with his employees. Now, I don't ever think about that. I know that I do it, but I don't. That's something I don't really think of or put a lot of thought into. But it's so true because every once in a while I'll have a customer. Now, I've been at Horizon for 3 years, coming up on 3 years now, and we'll have people come in that either I was there a day when they came in previously, I just happened to be in the back working, and somebody else helped them out, or whatever. It's like their first time meeting me, but they've been a customer forever. They'll ask me, so how do you like working for Jason? A lot. I get that question a lot. And it's, I never really thought about it as a kind of a subconscious, do I continue to trust this shop? Are they treating their employees well? Are they,
No, I'm sure it's more of on the level of like Jason just knows a lot of people, and a lot of people consider him to be a good guy. I mean, shit, he fixes everybody's cars. Like, that guy's always a good guy. The guy who knows how to fix your car and will fix it for you, you always want that guy on your team, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably just like, how do you like working for Jason, man? Like, I used to get that sometimes with my old boss, not the one that I have now, but my old boss, because he was he was in the Marines for a while and like did a lot of service stuff. And then a lot of the guys that worked in the field service part of our job were in the Marines with him. So they'd come out to get stuff from the warehouse, and they'd ask the employees like, "Hey man, how do you like working for Richard?" You know, tell you stories about him, like, "Oh yeah, one time bar, this, that, and the other." You know, like
you're like, "What, Richard?
Like,
really?
really? Okay." And then you see him every once in a while at a bar, and you're like, "Oh damn, okay, I can see that. Yeah, all right, cool."
Yeah, man, it's wild. I would have never. I mean, I always knew, and we've talked about this before on the channel. Like the blue collar jobs have to exist because without them, the modern civilized world as we know it falls apart.
Jordan he said it, like having your plumbing working is it's not something that you think about every day, and that's a great thing that you don't have to think about your plumbing working every day. But the times that you do have to think about it working when it's not working, boy, you are super thankful that there's just a phone number you can dial and a guy on the other end who has all the ability to make it better. You know, like
and it's crazy. There's so many of those things you take. I mean, electricians, plumbers. I mean, it's I don't even think when I go to take a dump in a toilet. Okay,
Never.
I don't even think about it. I go, I'm gonna hit this little handle. And it's all going to go
literally
away.
Flush my problems away.
Just flush it away.
Goodbye. See you later.
I mean, it's such a weird thing. I mean,
you don't even think
I'm
about
a mechanic, so I get into my truck. Every time I hit that key, I'm listening for shit. But, like, most people don't. They just get in and start it up, and they drive on their merry way.
On a Wyoming level, you know, like you don't think about it when you go to the gas station and pump gas into your car. You don't think about like what it took to get that gas from where it came from.
There's a dude named Josh Wingrove out on a rig right now.
Literally, his rig got shut down for a couple. He's literally just like sleeping in a truck in a cab of a truck for a few days, just out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere.
Pretty much.
And just trying to deliver fuel, man. Like. That's real shit. Man. Like you don't think about that when you're at the pump, but there is a huge process of these.
There's a whole bunch of guys,
blue collar sons of bitches out there getting dirty as hell and freezing their balls off, just making it happen. So it's crazy. It's a crazy thing, dude.
It is, man.
But yeah, that's I love Jordan Peterson's views on things because he has this way of stepping back from the topic and kind of like putting it on a bunch of different levels of perspective.
Yeah.
And then kind of at the end tying it all back together again. And I guess this isn't the end.
Good plumber.
I love that.
Includes
he's not just a good plumber as far as the context of the word is concerned, you know, like
man.
Yeah, it's good.
It's so good.
He's great. As far as I'm concerned, Jordan Peterson is going to stay on the channel. I like listening to this kind of stuff, man.
Yeah,
he's got good stuff to say.
And you know, to view things that we see every day and social interactions that we make every day and understanding the science of why people do the things they do, which is the whole reason I got into the YouTube thing anyway.
Yeah, right.
But understanding why we work the way we do as a society and why people make the decisions that they do based on their surroundings or maybe trauma or whatever. I mean, he has a very good insight into that stuff, and I always love learning it. But,
yeah, man, and I'm always down for a good conversation like that, a well-educated conversation, man. I'm always down to listen to somebody who's got really good insight on something, who knows a lot about these subjects. I'm like, yep, let's go. So stays on the channel, man.
That's it. Well, if you guys like this episode as much as we did, be sure to leave a thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, click the bell, become part of the notification gang. And with that, we'll see you guys next time. Bow.
We've done it.
We've done it.